I'm back, and today we're talking about minigames. You know, those tiny little games that live inside of bigger games. Some games are entirely made of minigames, and others just include them for some additional entertainment. But in the history of video games, which game was the first one? Which game was the first to include minigames? The answer to this question is very surprising indeed. Let's find out.
Let's all turn on the tube. This is hot dog soup.
Minigames. Many people know and love to play them. In modern gaming they are everywhere. Think of Fall Guys, Squid Game and the Mario Party series. They're all based on the premise that in order to win you have to play several different small games. Minigames can however be implemented in other ways. For example in games that do contain them, but they're not an integral part of the game itself. Many RPGs contain them, such as the Final Fantasy series and the Legend of Zelda series. Minigames are generally well liked by gamers, as they break up longer games and allow for small digressions and some nice mindless easy gaming. In the era of mobile gaming we call this casual gaming, and these type of games dominate the app stores. This is of course because literally no one nowadays has an attention span longer than that of a goldfish. You yourself have probably already stopped watching this video because it's too long. But are casual games minigames? I think not. Casual games are not contained inside of a bigger game. Many mobile games however do contain ads that are minigames in and of themselves. You can literally start playing a game that you haven't installed yet right inside an ad that's randomly being shown to you. That is of course terrible, and as a renowned vintage hardcore gamer, I reject that mobile ads are minigames. No, they're not! Stop it! Stop it! No! The popular game Roblox takes minigames to another level, allowing players to create and program their own minigames. Sort of. It's more like an app store, and some of these games aren't very mini at all. So these examples raise a question: what is a minigame exactly? A minigame is a small game that is contained inside of a bigger game. It can be optional to play, or it can be mandatory, but at least it has to reside inside of another game. And this is really essential, because if it was just a small game, then basically a lot of games from the 1980s would be minigames, and that's not what we're looking for. Another aspect of minigames is that they have to have different gameplay or mechanics from the main game. If the gameplay or mechanics are exactly the same as the parent game itself, it's just a bonus level and therefore not a minigame. Well, of course there are many different types of minigames. For example, crafting, fishing and cooking in survival games. These are of course part of the main story and will help you finish the game. But minigames can also be completely separated from the main game and just be intended for a little bit of extra fun. There even are some games that offer minigames while you are loading them, and you can play them until loading is finished. Well, that's all very nice and dandy, but where do minigames come from, and which game was the first one to incorporate them? If we skip current examples and go back in time, in the early 2000s we can find the WarioWare series that includes ultra-short minigames that lasted for about 3 seconds. Also in the early 2000s, GTA San Andreas offered arcade machines and pool games that were part of the game world but could be played separately. But we can of course go further back in time. Minigames saw their biggest rise in the 1990s when they were mostly part of RPG and adventure games. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time from 1998 included minigames such as shooting and archery, fishing, playing songs, bowling, digging and horse racing. The first Mario Party in 1998 was the first game to make minigames central to the game rather than secondary or optional. But it wasn't the first game to incorporate them. Final Fantasy VII, of course, in 1997 preceded that and contained heaps of minigames like chocobo racing, snowboarding, motorcycle racing, a tower defense style game, arm wrestling and many more. Because of this, Final Fantasy VII is often seen as the pinnacle of minigaming, but it definitely wasn't the first game to include them. We can easily go back more than 10 years before that to the magical 80s. Of course, the 80s. Many of the greatest video game inventions were made in that era, and surely the minigame was one of them. Super Mario Bros. 3 from 1988, for example, is a great contender. It offered minigames such as the Toad Houses, card matching, and the Hammer Brothers annoying you on the world map. 3 years before that, in 1985, Frankie Goes to Hollywood was released, that offered a live adventure style game and included minigames such as a shoot 'em up, a logic puzzle, an erotic puzzle, and a murder mystery plot. It was of course named after the famous musical group that had many international top hits. The Reflex is a lonely child waiting at... That was Duran Duran, wasn't it? But was Frankie Goes to Hollywood the first one? Or can we find others? Action sports games in those days mostly consisted of a series of minigames. Combat School, for example, from 1987, featured several track and field challenges as well as arm wrestling. 3 years earlier, Daley Thompson's Decathlon from 1984, of course, consisted of several track and field games. By the way, I made a video about joystick waggling, which was very common in these types of games. Link in the desk. In these track and field type games, there wasn't really a main parent game to play. It was just a series of small games. So can we call these minigames? Well, maybe we don't have to. We can go back to 1983. 1983 gave us Beachhead, a war game consisting of an island approach, air attack, a beach landing, air invasion, and a final fortress. Again, these were more of a series of different games without having an overarching game, so I myself wouldn't say those were minigames, even though many people would disagree. So, if we don't count Beachhead, can we find a game that contains minigames before Frankie Goes to Hollywood? The Reflex is a lonely... Some people say that Pac Man from 1980, the arcade machine, was the first to include minigames because of the intermissions between levels. Well, I say no, these intermissions were not playable and you could only watch them and they were exactly the same each time. So these were the first cutscenes perhaps, but they were not the first minigames. Others claim that the challenging stages from the arcade Galaga were the first minigames ever. But I say no, a bonus level is not a minigame because the game mechanics and gameplay are exactly the same as the parent game. So what then? What was the first game ever to include actual minigames? Well, I found the answer in a very obscure 8-bit home microgame. Yes, the first game to actually include minigames is a game that most people have never heard of. It's called Lazy Jones. This game could be played on the Commodore 64, MSX machines, the Einstein and ZX Spectrum. It contains an astonishing amount of 14 minigames. Lazy Jones was created by the famous video game music composer David Whittaker and released by Terminal Software in 1984. In this game you play as a lazy guy named Jones, of course, who is a cleaner in a hotel who doesn't really like to clean. To skive off work, he likes to enter the hotel rooms, that for some reason all contain different video games on ridiculously large screens. The hotel rooms offered a Chucky Egg parody, a Frogger clone, a balloon game, including music inspired by Nena's 99 Luftballons, a Space Invaders clone, as you do, a Hero clone, and some other shooting games, a Breakout clone, a Snake clone, and a bouncing ball game called The Reflex. The Reflex. Most minigames in Lazy Jones simply have a timer in which to score the most points before you return to the main game. But in some of the minigames, however, it is possible to die, which will also mean the game is over. So yes, these are minigames inside of a bigger game and they even impact and influence the way the bigger game can be completed. Even though the concept of having minigames inside of a bigger game was unique, Lazy Jones wasn't received in the press very well. By the time it was released, everyone was already sick and tired of Space Invaders, Frogger and Pac Man clones. Even though Lazy Jones sort of parodied them, did not make them any more desirable. And on top of that, the hotel game itself is basically a terrible version of elevator action. However, the angry video game nerd in 2021 called Lazy Jones a pretty revolutionary concept for its day and a crowning achievement of the Commodore 64. It's just a bunch of minigames, he said, and that's exactly the point. Lazy Jones was the first game ever to include minigames. And another thing, the game's music track Stardust, like the game itself, also created by David Whittaker, was used in 1999 by the German electro musician Zombie Nation for their massive hit single Kernkraft 400. So, not only did Lazy Jones launch the concept of minigames, it was also very influential in the world of electronic music. And in that way, once again, it beats Frankie Goes to Hollywood. No, don't do it! The replay. And there you go, that was the first game to introduce minigames, 1984, a wonderful year for both music and gaming. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, multiple comments and subscribe. You can do that for free, so why not do that? Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Watching over lucky clover.